Jamie Newman, managing editor of Modern Salon here, and we're talking to some of our favorite balayage experts today, all members of our Artist Collective, and we're just here to pick their brain a little bit about balayage as the technique and the business behind it as well. So we have Chris, Carla, Jess, and Britt here. They're all balayage specialists in their region, and they've agreed to share their knowledge today on this panel to answer technical questions, business questions, everything in between. And these questions could come from fellow stylists or the guests sitting in their chairs. So I'd like each of you to go around first and introduce yourself. So Chris, if you want to go first.
I'm Chris Smith from Chicago, Illinois. My Instagram is Christopher Aaron Studio. I've been doing balayage for about 12 years now.
How did you fall in love with the technique?
I fell in love with it because I was tired of foils, to be honest with you. I was just so tired of the whole beauty school life of foiling hair for so long, and I wanted something that was easier and something that was maybe a faster service for my clients instead of doing something of a full head of foils all over the head.
Cool. And we'll get back to that, the difference between balayage and foiling in a little bit. Carla, could you please introduce yourself to everybody?
Carla Massimo at carla.jean.styles. And I'm at Luna Hair in Westchester, Pennsylvania. I've been balayaging for probably like 5 years now. And I fell in love with it because of like the freestyle of it, honestly, just the freedom. I feel like we're machines when we foil. I feel like we all like know how to put them in, line them up, and it's satisfying in that sense, but balayage is just like freeing. It's a fun technique, I feel.
Awesome. Thank you. Jess, go ahead.
All right. I'm Jess Dornizak. Nobody knows my last name, but that's what it is. Instagram handle is at Jess D Hair. I am at Love Salon in Southampton, Pennsylvania. And what makes me love balayage? I like being more creative. So foils for me, while they still have some room for creativity, I like to be able to kind of get in there and just paint. And I mean, it's literally like the hairstylist version of, being an artist, painting something. Your vision essentially just hits the hair rather than being bound by like foil patterns. So that's what makes me love balayage.
Thank you. And Britt, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Brittany Bassett. I work in a salon, Immortal Beloved, in Richmond, Virginia. And I have been doing balayage for about 4 years now. And the reason I love balayage is just the technique itself. Just how you can really customize somebody's look, whether it's achieving, all over brightness, the contrast you can create with it, and just the grow out. I feel like a lot of my clients really want that low maintenance look, and while you can create that with foils as well, I feel like nothing compares to balayage.
Cool. So Britt, if you want to answer this one, because we're on you still, if a guest comes in asking for balayage, but you don't think that's really what they mean, how do you decide what technique you'll actually use and communicate that with your guest?
That's a really good question. I actually just recently changed my pricing structure because of that. I feel like a lot of clients see these looks on Instagram and Pinterest that are called balayage, but they don't understand that balayage is actually a technique and not a look. I get a lot of clients who have really dark hair and they want, that cool blonde look, which balayage is great, and you can get that cool look depending on the starting level, but usually with darker hair, it's really difficult to get that cool blonde. And so you have to explain to your client that you can create a similar look, but by painting the hair, there's going to be a lot of warmth left in the hair, versus using a technique with foiling like teasy lights or baby lights will achieve that, that brightness that they want. It's just all about consultation and just explaining to clients, because I think sometimes we forget that they don't really know what they're asking for, and they don't know, the levels of the hair and how to get from one to the other.
Thank you. And whoever wants to answer this can, but how does your pricing differ between balayage and foils and other techniques like that? And why is it different?
So I feel like balayage is a lot more of a customizable look for each client, where foils can be the same pattern for most people, but when you customize something for a client, it's like when you order a car and you customize it to yourself. So it's kind of that like technique that you charge more for. Like if you go to Kia, you can't buy the same thing that you get at Mercedes. If that makes sense.
Yeah. Does anybody want to add to that? Carla, I saw you turned your mic on before.
Yeah. So I feel like recently we actually started charging the same for foils and balayage, because I feel like now when you're doing foil work, it has so much more involvement because there's so many custom glosses and root shadows and things like that that go along with foiling, that personally I don't feel like it deserves to be cheaper than balayage, where even though balayage is custom in its application, foiling is now custom in its formula and its approach. So to me, like, there's no one is more expensive than the other in my book. I feel like they both cost a lot, unfortunately, because there's so much that goes into it now.
True. Which I think is like the fact of like, but people with balayage tend to wait longer than a foil, right? Do you guys feel that? So I feel like I charge more for it because those clients can go for longer. So the longer they go, the more money I'm going to charge, because that's more money that's sitting on my chair.
Yeah, I feel that.
How long do you recommend that your balayage guests go between appointments versus your foil clients?
I feel like we're all going to say something different for this. My foil clients probably go anywhere from 7 to 8 weeks, where some of my balayage people go for 3 to 4 months, depending. It's different for every client. Some clients like to see a little bit more of a root, and some clients don't. It just depends on everybody's look at what they have.
What about for you, Jess? How long do your clients come in between visits for balayage versus foils?
So I feel like I don't have like a clear-cut answer for that, because foils for me, and I feel like probably everyone is on the same page. When I say foils, your brain wants to go automatically towards like traditional foil patterns in your mind, but that's really not what I'm doing anymore. So it depends what I'm using the foil for, what kind of technique I'm using with it. So I mean, if I'm just banging out like a full highlight, just old school full highlight, your roots coming in a lot harder than if I'm doing a teasy light, but I'm still using a foil, if I got a lot of good natural blend in there. So it's kind of tough to answer. I feel like it just depends on what the exact look is, but generally I do a lot of surface painting. So my balayages get really, really, well blended. So I feel like you could easily get like 4 months out of them, not including needing a toner, because you're going to be orange as hell in the meantime. But whereas for foils, I feel like typically if I'm using foils, I'm getting like a little bit higher of a contrast, or maybe I'm using them to pack in that more color. So they typically won't last as long as balayage. I may say, come back in 2 months and we need to do something with the lightener again. But like I said, it depends on the look that we achieved.
So you brought up blending specifically. So I have some questions specific to that. I think we could go around for everybody to mention like 1 or 2 tips when it comes to achieving a seamless blend with balayage.
So 2 things come to mind right off the bat for that. One is, and this is just for me personally, I know we all have such different styles. I do, like I said, a lot of surface painting. And I really like to almost kind of keep the top, like the transition very, very light with my application. That way I'm always kind of getting that mid color. When you're doing somebody really dark, sometimes that can get dicey because they can get, kind of orange. But what I like to do is like really, really skim the color. So it's almost just kind of bumping the base a little bit. So you might go from like a level 4 to like a level 5, just because I have a little bit of product there, and then melt that out into heavier coverage with the product, where I'm getting, 2-3 solid levels of lift versus like a half a level of lift, if that makes sense. And then the other thing that I do that's pretty much non-negotiable is everybody gets like a root drag or a root melt. I feel like we used to try to not do that, but I'm pretty sure more people than not are just doing it on everybody. So that's where I can really kind of customize if you got warmth in that transition, it's too warm, or if I was just moving through super fast and I want just that extra layer of, blending. So that's like those 2 things are pretty much how I'm blending everybody.
Brittany, do you have any tips for how you achieve a seamless blend?
I definitely think the consistency of your mixture is key. If it's too thick, you're not going to be able to get that blend. If it's too thin, you're going to have bleeding and lines. And along with Jess said, how you're kind of almost creating like a gradient when you're blending, where you're kind of like a softer application into a heavier. For me, I found that prevents any sort of like line of demarcation, which we usually just associate, with highlights growing out. But, back in the day when I first started balayaging, that was a real issue of mine, is not having that blend and there still being lines. So yeah, just kind of going from a lighter hand to a heavier hand really helps with creating that blend.
Carla, what about for you?
So first, I think definitely your tool of choice, and a natural chip brush, I feel makes it like the easiest, and it just like almost makes it happen for you, the seamless blend. I feel like it just does the magic. And I'm with the girls on the consistency of your product and your choice of product. So if you're using a clay lightener, definitely a lot easier to get the seamless blend. If you're using a traditional highlight lightener, you're going to work harder to make that seamless because it's just not meant to move like that. So those two things for sure.
Chris, I know you kind of blew everybody's mind at the first Artist Session Influencer series by showing how you do balayage on wet hair. How does that help with the blend for you?
By doing doing a balayage on wet hair, I'm able to give more of a seamless look because of the fact that I'm able to slip on the hair a lot easier. For me, I barely do dry hair, to be honest with you. And with my color line that I work with, I'm able to do most color on damp hair. So with the line that I use, I'm able to apply a little bit of a oil on the hair, like our keratin healing oil, that gives the little hair a little bit more of a slip that allows me to have an easier blend without having to tease, without having to work so hard to get a hot root or like a more of an orangey area. So I definitely would feel like just wet balayage for me is just the best way of having a seamless look and more of a natural look so that you don't have to work so hard. Because if I don't have a time to go back and do a root shadow, which I love root shadows, but if it just doesn't work for that client or their wallet, it's just an easier factor to give me that natural look.
You guys, a lot of you mentioned favorite products. So clay lightener versus traditional lightener formulas or using a chip brush. Does anybody have other favorite products when it comes to balayage?
A glass bowl. I feel like having like a big, heavy bowl makes a big difference in like being able to stir your product and maneuver that and get it ready to work with. Like some people like a paddle. I like a big glass bowl.
Can you explain? So to be able to see your formulation?
To be able to blend your lightener better. So like, how some people will maneuver it on a paddle or they'll use like the back of their hand. I like to use the bowl to be able to whip that product around and use like the lip of it to draw your product. So this way, everything's kind of staying smooth and neat. And of course, like the heavier it is, the better it's just going to sit on your tray. So you're not fumbling around with like a bowl that could be tipping over because you're laying into it too heavy. Yeah, I think it's just a good tool.
Love that. Jess or Brittany, do you have any specific tools or products that you love to use?
Saran wrap. A lot of times I'll saran wrap my balayages, or I'll use longer foils just for extra insulation, because I actually mix traditional lightener with my clay. Just breaking all the rules. It gives me a little extra lift while still having like a clay consistency. But yeah, I use saran wrap pretty much on everybody.
Could you explain, I guess for me and for some of the viewers, but when you're creating balayage, I think we've all seen before, some artists like using cotton, some like using saran wrap, some like using foils, some like don't use anything and just let it process in the air. Could you talk about the differences and maybe the benefits?
Yeah, so when you're using traditional clay lightener, essentially it stops lifting once it is completely dry. It typically will kind of start drying from the outside and work its way down. But by applying saran wrap, you're keeping it, I hate this word, but you're keeping it moist for a little bit longer. So it's able to, continue lifting. And when I'm using, mixing traditional lightener in with my clay for my darker levels, it really gives me the ability to lift, 2 to 3 levels more than just using clay. And then, by using foils, that kind of helps with the traditional lightener, just kind of gives it a little bit of a boost. And then, if you're using, clay on somebody who's already a level 7 or already level 8, you really don't have to use anything to insulate the hair because it's going to get the lift you need at that point. And as far as cotton, typically that's used just to keep, each level of hair that you grabbed and painted from resting on top of another, just to avoid lines and spotting.
Just out of curiosity now, what do each of you use? Right, you talked about the saran wrap. Jess, what do you usually use?
So I'm not a big saran wrap person. I've been trying to get back into it a little bit more, depending on, again, like what we're trying to accomplish. I tend to like using cotton and kind of go in open air, and I realize that you don't get as much lift out of that, but I feel like a lot of my looks that people come to me for when they're wanting them and they're really melty and blendy, and we're kind of moving a little bit slower at a pace, but it keeps that just really nice kind of like soft melt look. It's because I'm not getting as much lift, so I'm not wrapping them. But I do use cotton to keep them separated. And then I feel like if people want, if I want more lift in one visit, I tend to go towards foil. So, it stops becoming a traditional balayage and becomes more of a teasy light situation. But I've been trying to experiment a little bit more with getting back into the saran wrap, knowing what I know now about all the different methods.
Carla, which method do you use?
I'm definitely a saran wrap person. I feel like once you get it down, Jess, it's definitely easy to use. And oh man, I want to say it's Product Club has the pre-cut saran, and that is pretty slick. I feel like you can just like really rip and go with that brand.
Chris, what do you use?
I either use my Lanza films or I use my Quality Touch non-cling film. Those are like my two go-tos. This is just on a roll and I can pull it and rip it as I go. And I don't have to either there's a lot of things that you have to, me personally, I give Carla and Jess props because I hate things that stick to my hands. So every time I was like, even when wrapping food when I was younger, I'd be like, get this shit off me. Well, excuse me. Get this off me. But it's just faster going for me. But that's just, yeah.
What's the difference between saran wrap and films for somebody who doesn't know?
Saran wrap is more of loose, movable. If I'm explaining this right, because you guys use it more often than I do, it's more of a loose, movable. Where the film is more of a stiff plastic. So one's more movable and one's more stiff.
Yeah. So to sum it up, it seems like all the different methods are based on user preference. Let's talk social media. All of you are members of our Artist Connective, which right there tells everybody we love your pages, you're capturing your work in gorgeous ways, and all the editors at Modern are big fans of yours. When it comes to capturing your balayage work and showing the perfect, dimension and pops of color, things like that, how do you approach getting the perfect shot? Jess, let's start with you.
Okay, so I feel like these are, a lot of going back to basics, but first the hair has to be clean. And when I say clean, I mean like, not greasy clean, but like make sure your finish is clean, because I feel like if you take a great photo, but your finish looks like crap, then why you want a high quality picture of crap. So there's that. Just work on your finish, right? Make sure that you got all your flyaways, all the weird stuff out of your backgrounds. My bosses think I'm crazy because I move everything out of the shot. They have plants and stuff, but I just keep moving them. And then take your time and really find the best lighting. I hate when I see people that are like, oh, I only have 5 seconds. My next client's already here staring at me. Like, hurry up, snap, move on. And then they're like, why do I have 300 followers and most of them are my family? You know what I mean? Like, why take the picture at all? I just feel like in today's competitive world of, hair photography, like, just don't take it if you're not going to come correct. So take your time, find the lighting, clean finish, clean background. Don't over filter, over edit. And I don't mean like filter, but like, weird shit you got going on in the background, whatever. Don't do that. Okay, I'm done.
Does anybody do other things beyond that they want to mention?
I would do a lot of stories that get people to get interactive with me. So like, even if I don't post the picture that day, I'll show the video in my stories and give them a little into it of it, because I feel like people like to be nosy in our lives and know what we're doing every day and how we're doing it. So if we give it to them in our stories and then we give them the book on our page, they're more likely to go visit it.
I love that. Brittany or Carla, do you have anything to add?
I think videos are huge lately. Even just like, I've been doing videos of just the hair afterwards, like instead of a picture. And I feel like that is just more real and more exciting. You figure there's so many of us out there trying to showcase our work, and so many of us are kind of into the same thing. So I think everyone gets bored. So just doing literally anything out of the norm. Even I see people like doing all types of crazy stuff when they're taking their pictures, like climbing on things, laying down, I feel like we've all seen the memes. But just really anything out of the norm, I think is good for social media. I try to remind myself and usually suck at that, but try to remind.
Brittany, a question that I think you could answer pretty much for everybody, but how has social media helped build your books, and how has you being known as like a balayage expert on Instagram impacted like the type of client that you have in the salon now?
God, Instagram, I always like to say Instagram is a blessing and a curse because I spend way too much time on it, but honestly, it's like a second job. And I know a lot of people are like, Instagram's not important and they don't want to be on it. But, years ago when hair first started, you'll see those lookbooks with all the hairstyles in it sitting at the waiting table, where people can kind of peruse through and say, well, I want this color. That's Instagram. Now that is literally where 95% of my clients are coming from, because they're searching hashtags, they're searching local places, using geotags. I've had people who live in my apartment complex find me because I tag, various places in the area on there. Man, it's such a great tool to have to build your clientele. I mean, when I first started my Instagram after school, I had maybe 100 followers. And really in the last like 4 years, my Instagram just exploded because balayage really became popular here. I mean, it's a technique that's been around for years and years before we even knew what it was. But people want that look. They want that lived in, easy look. They want to not have to come to the salon every 6 weeks. They just want that effortless hair, just wake up and go and have that dimension.
Yeah, for each of you, if you could estimate what percentage of your clients you're doing balayage on, what would you estimate?
When I first started, it was probably 90% of my clientele. But now that, there's things like teasy lights and all these other techniques that sometimes you have to do to achieve the color and the look that clients want, it's probably about 50% now, but I do a lot more foil work now as well.
Chris, Carla, Jess, what would you estimate?
So I would say like 75%. I feel like I'm with Britt, where it started out being a whole lot more, and now it's, just shifting back into something else. But I feel like probably 75% of them are still balayage in some way, shape, or form, even if it's just like a little bit going with their retouch or something.
Jess?
For me, I agree with both of them. In the beginning, it was like almost everybody, and then it moved a little bit more into foils. But interestingly enough, I feel myself trying to transition back into my original ratio, just because I like it more, and I feel like for me, I get to be more creative. Whereas foils, I feel like just require a lot more structure than like excites me as much as balayage. So I've been really, once you build up a rapport with your clients and they trust you, and I've been a lot more comfortable saying, hey, we're going to move a little bit slower on this, but the result's going to excite me and in turn excite you a lot more, and then just get people back into balayage because I feel like it just makes me happier. Painting is fun, whereas foils, they get you a lot further, but I just feel like they lack that creativity for me anyway. So yeah, 3 completely different answers.
Do you feel like social media has made an impact on moving back towards balayage? Like, could you use it as a way to educate your guests on this is what you could achieve with this technique, and this is why I want to do it when you're sitting in my chair?
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like social media, it just gives you the reach to say what you already want to say. So if I already want to tell people in my chair, hey, you've been seeing me for 5 years, 10 years, whatever, you trust me when I say XYZ, now I get to do that on social media for the people who have been trusting me just through following me there, so, and also I think it gives you a huge opportunity to showcase your expertise, if you want to call it, to potential customers, whereas now they're trusting you. So if they come in and they say, oh, I want balayage, and I'm saying, yeah, that's cool, we'll give you that look, but it's done with foils, they're not going to argue with me, because of social media, because they got to know me and my knowledge and my skill set, that they're not going to challenge it. And so social media has done a lot of those things. So I could sing its praises and curse its curses, like Brittany.
Let's get into something technical again. Tips that you guys have for sectioning and placement. This specifically came from other Artist Connective members of questions they're asked often about balayage. So do you have any favorite type of sectioning, or is it more of a case-by-case basis? Carla, I'll let you go first for this.
So I would say it's case by case in most cases, but I definitely have a rhythm that I like to follow. And the vision is usually like, where does the sun not hit? Like, I feel like keeping that depth is my biggest thing, and my favorite thing, kind of like the game I play when I'm figuring out where to land all of the brightness. So that's my sectioning is usually determined by like their head, where it rounds, things like that. And then the placement is typically, where does the sun hit and why am I putting this here?
Chris, could you tell us your secrets of getting that perfect face framing piece that I feel like all guests are asking for, and it's like the hot thing on Instagram is showing those face framing pieces?
For me, I think for sectioning wise, I feel like I do things differently on every single client. So I can't say there's one technique that I use. It just depends on their face shape, what they're looking for, how much boldness they want. But I mean, as you know, which I've showed before, I do triangle sections around the whole front of the head, and I'll balayage and weave those sections depending on what I'm going for. I think it's just very customizable to what they want for face framing. I think a lot of times, even with me teaching, everybody wants a certain placement of something, and there's no certain placement you can give people when, like Carla said, everything is so customizable to everybody that it's very hard to stick into one placement. So I think it's just about what you feel when that client sits down in your chair and what's going to be best for them. Because something that I do on Sally, I won't do on Jen.
Got it. Let's talk toners. After you've lightened the hair, explain to me, are you always reaching for a toner after, and how do you decide which is right for each client that's in your chair? Chris, you could start with this one.
I probably say 95% of the time I'm using a toner or glaze. For me, I feel like it gives a more of a finished look. It blends better. and it gives you more of a shine to the hair that you can't get if you don't do it. That's just, now some people will say they don't like to use glazes, but I think for that blending of it, you have to, just to give that depth in there sometimes.
Brittany, I want you to answer the question too, and I also want to know how many colors of toners or glazes do you typically use on each guest?
Yeah, definitely every client gets a toner. I feel like it's kind of just the icing on the cake. And I mean, there's only so many levels that you can lift the hair. So they're going to leave, if you don't tone, they're going to leave some shade of red, orange, yellow, which, let's be honest, most of our clients don't want. So for me, using a toner is canceling out the tones that I don't want, obviously creating ones that I do want. I like to mix, I like to do crazy mixes, crazy tones. My coworker Drew likes to call it emotional mixing, because sometimes I'll just like grab things that I think will look awesome together, and usually ends up looking good or decent most of the time. But yeah, usually my formulations, typically between 2 and 3, sometimes 4. And I use Redken shades, so it's really easy to create like cohesive looks mixing, different shades that they offer.
Jess, when you're sending a balayage client home, what do you typically prescribe to them as their at-home regimen to maintain their color in between appointments?
Okay, that's a good one. So I pretty much tell them in the nicest way possible, you're leaving with shampoo today. So that's just from jump, you know what I mean? I'm a pretty curt person, but depending on who you are, I'll find like a funny way to be like, hey, you're buying this. So, and like how much are you actually making in commission off of a shampoo? So it's not about that. I need you to do everything that you can do to keep this alive at home. We have the conversation. I like to talk to them about it during the service, because a lot of times you're in my chair for 4 hours. So it's not like, I couldn't use the conversation filler, anyway. So a lot of times we talk about it then. And, I run through, the obvious things that could be hurting you at home. Are you in the sun a lot? Are you using burning hot water? Are you swimming a lot at the beach? All that stuff. Hot tools. Are you overusing hot tools? Are you not using heat protectants? Stuff like that. So, yeah, I pretty much I'll ask them point blank, like, do you have a heat protectant? And they'll be like, oh, I think maybe you're, I'm like, yeah, you're lying. So then I'm like, cool, I'm going to show you this. So just know that if you're not using this, that you're just going to need to come see me a lot faster. So, and like I was mentioning earlier about building trust with your clients, I feel like by the time you're saying that, you already have their trust and they don't feel like you're just trying to sell them shit. So, that's, that helps you in that respect. And just basic things that they can be doing at home, like all of that stuff makes a big difference. A lot of times people don't realize that because they're flat ironing their hair every day, why does it look so dull, and why is it orange, or why is it darker? You're losing your tone, and some people just don't realize that. So I just go over all the basics with them, and then if it becomes a problem, like hey, it's fading fast, then we have to start really digging into what other things it could be.
When you mention shampoo, are you talking purple shampoo or what product specifically?
Okay. I'm not a huge purple shampoo fan. And I feel like I'm underselling my emotion for purple shampoo. I'm not a fan. So I feel like it can just get really off the tracks really quickly. With an average consumer, you're not educated. You don't know what we know. So you're using it at home like, oh, if 1 wash is great, 2 must be better. Or if, a dollop is good, $10 must be better. And then you're coming in complaining that I made your hair fried when, that dry ass purple shampoo made your hair fried. Or you come in and I'm like, oh, did you buy purple shampoo? Yeah, can you tell? I'm like, well, half of it's actually lilac. So yes, I can. Some of it looks okay and some of it is purple. I'm just saying. So, no, I don't recommend purple shampoos. I feel like I would rather just like, long-term treat the issue rather than give you like a painkiller. Like I'd rather be like, hey, let's tackle the issue. So if you're needing that at home, we need to lift you past that, you know what I mean, here, rather than give you, you know, this painkiller and just let you run amok with it, you know. So let's talk about your next appointment, how we're going to, you know, conquer that. Not a purple shampoo fan. But I know a lot of people are. Okay, wait, to be fair, I'm okay with using purple shampoo in the salon. I do mess around with that in the salon. I know a lot more what I'm doing than you, I feel like, in the shower and, you know, just squeezing and praying. So, although I don't know what you're doing in the shower, so I can't really say for sure. But that's neither here nor there.
So when you say sending them home with a shampoo, though, do you just mean a professional shampoo versus one from a big box store or something like that?
Yeah, definitely. And I will always like make a joke about it. And like, you know, like if you send like a serious text, but you write LOL at the end, like it's like your little buffer. I'll always be like, girl, let me find out you're buying my recommendations on Amazon. But like, I'm dead serious. So yeah, like, you know, we carry a couple different lines at our salon and different price points. I am a huge R&Co fan. We sell R&Co, so I'm always going right over to that. You know, and I explain to them why the value is there for the price, you know, because the average person is like, oh, but this one's $6 cheaper or whatever. And they sound nasally like that. So they don't. But yeah, you know, I'm just, you know, like every line has those like, hey, you have fine hair, here's our volumizing line, whatever. But I'm just explaining to you why this is better than the version that you're getting in CVS. And I will always welcome them to buy it at CVS, but know that they're coming back to see me in like 3 weeks and spending another $200 to fix what they washed out to save 10. So.
Okay. So just mentioned professional shampoo, heat protectant. Carla, Chris, or Britt, do you have any other must-have take-home products to ensure the work that you've done on your guests lasts?
I feel like those things definitely cover the take-home regimen. Good job, Jess. Although I do think also in-salon treatments help. Definitely an advocate lately of the good old conditioning treatment. I feel like people like want to think it's an upsell, but it's like if you just do it and feel the difference right now, you're going to be like, oh yeah. And most of the time they are. So in-salon treatments, also good.
And are you doing the in-salon treatments in between appointments, or are you, after the color service, you're doing the conditioning treatment and then the client's waiting until their next appointment?
Yes. So after the color service, definitely a conditioning treatment. If they come in for a gloss, potentially another treatment could happen then as well. But I usually wouldn't bring someone in just to do a treatment unless their hair is super duper compromised. And then that's like something else. Like we're probably not even doing color at that point. But yeah, with the service, definitely a treatment.
Chris, after you're done with a balayage color service, are you pre-booking clients? And if so, when are you booking their next appointment?
My clients usually are booked out for the year. So for me, because of my schedule, my clients are balayage clients are every 3 or 4 months, and they'll book for those times. And they'll book their toners in between those and their treatments in between those and their haircuts. Because I feel like if I give them scheduled for the year, it's already set, they already know. And then even a doctor's appointment can't get in their way of getting in because they already know they have a hair appointment coming up.
So you're booking guests for their big 4-hour color service, and then in between that, you're booking them for a gloss and then
haircut
before their next appointment.
Yeah, for the year. It's like, you know, instead of me waiting for them to call back, let me just tell them the rules of my salon. If you want to be my client, then this is just like how your hair is going to look better if you do it things like this way. You're booked out for the year.
So if somebody's coming in for a gloss, how much time are you allocating for that versus if they're coming in for a big color refresh?
So if a gloss is just like they're coming in for a glaze and a treatment, I'd probably say no more than an hour. And then for a balayage, it's up to 3.5 hours the most.
Let's end with the next question, just because I think it could be very blue sky and aspirational. But if everybody wants to go around and say why they think this quote unquote trend has stuck around for so long, and maybe touch on its evolution and where you think that it's heading next. So Brittany, if you want to start.
Yeah. I feel like balayage, I mean, it's been around for so long and I don't think it's going anywhere. Kind of touching base on what we discussed earlier on how customizable it is and how you really can achieve any kind of look you want with it. I think as far as how it's going to change moving forward, I think that's just going to be, dependent on the stylist and how they take that further. Because as simple as balayage is, it's also endless what you can do with it.
Carla, if you want to go next.
Sure. So I think it has stuck around for so long because it's timeless. The look is timeless. Like, I feel like this is the era where we're not going to look back 20 years from now and be like, oh, what were we thinking? Like, everyone's hair looks good right now. We can all agree on that. So I think it's taking us, honestly, I think the shift is coming back to chunky dimension. I hope that it is. I kind of like it, Brittany. I kind of like it. But soft. I feel like that's what balayage kind of started as, was ribbons. I feel like we all were used to seeing those ribbons, and now it kind of turned into a blended world. And I feel like the ribbons are going to come back. And I'm kind of excited for it. I think, some side-by-side contrast is due.
It's like the grown-up version of the early 2000s chunky highlights.
Yes. Kelly Clarkson got an upgrade. Yes.
Amen. Chris, what do you think about the evolution of balayage, and where would you like it to head next?
Well, I hope chunky Kelly Clarkson highlights don't come back in. I can say that. Maybe a modern version of it, yes. Let's just not hope the black, the red, and the blonde don't ever come back in. That is too scary. I definitely agree with the girls. I feel like balayage is, here's the thing. Balayage is not only a look, it's a technique. So it's not, you can't just get rid of it. That's like saying you're going to get rid of a 0-degree haircut. It's just not going to happen. It's just for a 90-degree or layers or a bob. It's not going anywhere. I think it's stuck where it's going to stay. And I think people might change it around and give it something different and add things to it. But I really think the technique will never go away, which I'm happy for.
And then Jess, you could answer the same question, but also how do you think stylists should stay on top of their balayage game, or any of these other techniques that are kind of the little children of balayage?
I think that's a good question. I feel like at this point, I'm just going to agree with what everybody else said, especially with what Chris said. It's not the name of a look, it's the name of a technique. So you wouldn't say, you know what I mean? Like, oh, haircuts are out of style. Like, what do you mean haircuts are out of style? Like, you can't declare haircuts being out of style. So, yeah, it's not going anywhere. I think it's just going to keep morphing with the trends, but that's why it's stayed around so long, because you're able to use the same technique to morph with the trends, whether it's very blended, whether it's, God help us, Kelly Clarkson highlights, whether it's super heavy blondes or, a fake baby light effect. There's so much you can do with that one word. So that is really cool. And I think that's why that's been around. And I think it is so, so, so important for you to stay on top of your education for that exact reason. It's going to keep changing, and you don't want to be the girl that's finally perfecting a shadow root long after the shadow roots aren't a thing anymore. Or, you know what I mean? You don't want to be the girl that's nailing ombres 8 years later, and believe it or not, I hear that a lot. I'm like, girl, you definitely got a cheap class way late. So we're not doing that anymore. You have to, it's going to keep evolving. You have to stay up on your education, or you're just going to get left behind. That's just a rule in general. But especially with something that evolves a lot, if you master, a 0-degree haircut, you master the 0-degree haircut. But, when something keeps evolving, you just got to keep up with it, or sit the hell down. Somebody else is going to do it.
If somebody's watching this saying, I don't even know where to look for education, I know a lot, like I think all of you are educators. Where would you recommend that they look, and what should their first steps be when educating themselves?
So literally the World Wide Web. It's very easy. Just log on to literally anything, a search bar of any sort. You could ask Jeeves if he's still a thing. Like, you have to close your eyes and cover your ears and like get in a fetal position to not find education. So I hate when I hear people saying that, or they don't know where to start, it's too expensive. Like, no, you're all on social media, and you know, companies like Modern Salon are handing you the breadcrumbs to find it. So find somebody you resonate with, be it a company or an educator or a friend who's into education, and just kind of follow the breadcrumb trail. It's very simple to really find somebody you connect with. Educators are everywhere. Education is everywhere. It's free, it's expensive, and everywhere in between. So there's something out there for you. So you really have to go out of your way to not educate yourself. So don't be that person. It's not cute.
That was beautifully said. Does anybody want to add anything to that about education?
When people tell me they can't find classes, like Jess said, it's kind of like, well, what are you doing in your career? Because at the same time, you work in a salon. I literally work in a studio salon, and I go around to all my girls and learn things from them. The time that, as soon as I start thinking that I know everything is when I'm going to stop growing. And that's a lot of the problems that we have with a lot of stylists today, is that they think they've already hit that mark when they can do everything, when they're really not doing everything. There's 1,500 different ways you can do balayage. Even me as an educator for a company, I can't go and teach the same thing I taught last year. I need to up my game and, still not be arrogant about what I know and be willing to learn more. I feel like the more you push yourself every day is going to be the better yourself. Like, so if you have a stylist that you want to learn something from, go work with them for a day. Like, I'll hit people up that are celebrity stylists on Instagram. Like, can I come shadow you for a day? Or hell, I might hit these girls up, Jess, Carla, and Brittany, and be like, okay, what are you doing that I'm not doing? Because that's the thing. Instead of like, it's just a really big thing when people just tell me they know how to balayage already, or they know how to do something. I'm like, there's more than one way to do something. That's just like, there's more than one way to lose weight. I haven't figured it completely out, but I mean, there's more than one way.
Brittany, Carla, any last words?
Just like a quick thing with, education is now with Instagram TV, a lot of stylists are creating videos showing, how they're creating these styles. Myself included, I've just, started doing Instagram TV. Aside from it helping my Instagram really grow, a lot of stylists have messaged me and reached out to me saying, oh, I like how you did that. I never thought of that before. Or, wow, I didn't know you could do that a different way. And Instagram TV is free. Like, there's so many videos. Even myself, I'll sit there and get lost in Instagram TV, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm totally going to try that next time. Or I'll even sometimes reach out to the artist. I know some people don't like being messaged by other stylists, but I love sharing, my journey and how far I've come. And there are stylists that I reached out to, along my journey, who took the time to, encourage me and answer my questions. And I felt like it really helped me in my career. So I try to do the same when other stylists, message me, because my career has grown in 4 years. I've only been in a salon for 4 years, and we just have such a huge network, and, there's resources everywhere, no matter, what you can afford, what you can't afford. It's just a matter of how bad you want it.
Carla?
So being a product of Instagram education, I would say that like it's everywhere out there. So for anyone to say that they can't find it, I would call them a liar, because it's literally everywhere. So I do think, like, even just following closely to the people that you like on Instagram, I think if you're lucky enough to work with someone that you can follow and shadow, that is awesome. But if you're not, you can do that same thing through social media, because pretty much everyone out there who has some type of in-depth knowledge is educating on their Instagram. You know, so there's just like countless opportunities, I feel, that we can all just keep on getting.
We always like to say here at Modern that, you know, there's never been a point in time where you literally have a Rolodex of brands and educators and stylists that inspire you at your fingertips. So I think, speaking for all of us, I think we just urge everybody to make those connections and like take that extra step in educating themselves and learning more about something that makes them uncomfortable in order to get better. We'll have all of your guys' handles for the viewers. So I imagine that you are going to have a lot of people hitting you up after this panel, asking questions, wanting more education, picking your brain. But yeah, I wanted to thank all of you for participating in this and sharing your expertise with our audience. And this was so fun, and I hope we get to do it again.
Yay, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks very much.